Hey, everybody. This is He Said, She Said, and Dennis and I are joining you live to talk about gender pay gap today. This should be an interesting conversation because I don't know if we agree on everything. I guess we're going to find out, but I really.
It ain't.
Huh?
I said should be. It will be. I don't think that we do agree on it. I
I
don't know.
don't think so. I don't think so either. I think it's going to be interesting to I'm curious to hear your viewpoint on it, because I know in the middle of the week you sent me a text, and that text was a graphic that you found on LeBron James and Sue Bird.
Can you throw it up on the screen? Because I don't remember exactly what I put on the screen.
You know what? I may be able to
It's
share
in the show notes, right? So there's a big discrepancy, obviously, between your highly compensated, most famous athlete on the planet, who happens to be a dude, in LeBron James, and the highest paid female WNBA player, or was it an endorsement? What was it?
No, it was I didn't find. I'm looking for the graphic right now. All right, hang on. Let me see if I can do this.
Women typically make 82 cents on the dollar that men make. Is it fair? Is it unfair? Are there times when women deserve less? LeBron James made $37.44 million in 2020. Sue Bird made $215,000. They both played 17 professional seasons, both won 4 championships. Their bonus, LeBron, he pulls down $370K, which is chump change. That's pocket change for the king. Probably went out and bought some high quality wines that he's known for. Sue Bird managed to get his leftover change from the wine tab, put $11,356 into her pocket for winning 4 championships. Divide that by 4. She got $3,000 basically less.
Yeah.
Than $3,000 per championship. What are your thoughts? Join us. Yes, Sue Bird. Had a little bit of humble pie and spike that one in your shot blocking capabilities.
This was terrible. When you sent me this, I was like, what? Like this, there's such a huge gap. And I don't think it's fair, but there are other variables to come into my thought process, right? First off, there's a huge gap with men and women and what they make, but we'll stick to just athletics today. Maybe we'll venture off somewhere else. And I'll be honest, I didn't know who Sue Bird was until you sent that. I had to Google her.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, yeah, Sue Bird could be Larry Bird's daughter for all we care. We just know that she was obviously a well-respected 17-year WNBA veteran that had comparable things going along the way to LeBron James. And the discrepancy is obviously huge, right? I mean, there's obviously no doubt about it. But Sue Bird, her salaries. So what do you think, Deanna, when we're talking about not mere mortals, but we're not talking about civilians here. We're talking about professional athletes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So my opinion is kind of mixed, and I want to explain why it's mixed. Okay. On one hand, I think this is outrageous that there's such a big gap. I think, I'm okay with there being some gap, not between men and women, but between ability. Okay. So on the other hand, this is a business, just like any other business, right? So if LeBron brings in more people, more money, more tickets are sold, right? then he deserves more money.
Okay.
However, where my question is that male sports typically gets more media attention. And I think that's where the discussion needs to start going in order for women to start making more money. If we're looking at it from a business model of who's bringing in more revenue, men definitely, depends what sport we're talking about. But most sports that we're most familiar with, men are typically bringing in more revenue. So I understand that, but we need some media attention for women athletes. So this needs to be a little bit more even. There's a huge discrepancy between the two.
In terms of U.S. viewership, in 2018 Men's World Cup Final and the 2019 Women's Cup Final, the former drew 11.4 million viewers compared to the latter of 14.3. So that means that the men had 14 million people versus 11 million people. It's not that big of a discrepancy when you're talking about 3 million people viewing a World Cup. But the difference in the delta is something around $1 billion in revenue generated by the Men's World Cup versus about $130 million by the Women's World Cup. I don't think that there's enough media on the earth, not for the World Cup, but to fix the WNBA.
Why do you say that?
You could get the best marketing campaign going for X, Y, and Z athlete. You could get Nike and all the creative that you want, sign the athlete to Apple, the biggest brands, make it the coolest thing that you've ever seen in your life. Hey, look, I love the women's game, but like at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can do to have that marketability, have that media coverage, and do it 24/7, and it's still not going to end up catching up to where you see the earning potential, the earning capital, the market cap of what the men's game and a guy like LeBron James commands in it.
I don't agree with you at all. I don't agree at all. But what do you mean a guy like LeBron James? Who's a guy like LeBron James?
Well, there's only really one guy like LeBron James on the face of the earth, right? But you're looking at the difference in the machine is that the NBA generates $7.4 billion worth of revenue annually, and the WNBA is at 60 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
Why?
It doesn't have the same it doesn't have the same backing. It doesn't have the same curb appeal. It doesn't have the same amount of people buying tickets to go to games. Like they're able to get the TV coverage, and there's nobody stopping you from going. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been to a WNBA game?
No, but I've only been to one NBA game, so that doesn't say a whole lot.
Why?
Actually, basketball is not really my thing.
Don't duck though from the conversation about like when I mean, if it was either an amazing game, which I do think that it's good basketball, or an amazing social experience, we see all the time now that like mass droves of people are going to baseball games in non-pandemic years, and they're going to hang out in these bars in right field and or behind home plate that have nothing to do with baseball. It has everything to do with the social experience. So if it was an amazing social experience, there's nobody stopping people from them selling out these arenas on a regular basis.
Well, I agree that social experience absolutely plays into it, but I still say it goes back to the core of the media coverage. And 4%, it's only 4% of women athletes that get media coverage in comparison to the men, right? So you can run the cycle saying, okay, well, there's no media coverage because it will never measure up to the NBA. Well, maybe it won't measure up because they don't have the endorsements. They don't have, because they aren't highlighted as much or as often as men's sports are, unless you're like ice skating or tennis or gymnastics. Then I think those, or during the time of the Olympics, then at that time women athletes are highlighted, but you don't see it as often. And I think that's where it needs to change. We should be showing that more. I didn't know who Sue Bird was. Again, I don't really follow basketball that much, but I should, with the record that she has and everything that she has done. I should have heard her name somewhere along the line, or maybe it's just me. Maybe I live under a rock and I didn't know who she was.
So let me help you out for a second, and I don't mean that I hope that doesn't sound condescending, but like, so Robert Horry played in the NBA for like 15, 18 years, nicknamed Big Shot Bob. He's won more NBA championships than LeBron. I want to be accurate. I know that he's got at least Robert Horry rings. I think he has 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Robert Horry has 7 NBA championship rings. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
But you've heard of LeBron James.
Well, how long ago was this Robert guy around? Is he new? Is he recent?
I think anybody that knows basketball knows Big Shot Bob. Now.
Okay, and I don't. I proved my case. I don't know.
Robert Horry. Now, here's the thing.
Honestly though, this is a serious question. It's not leading you into anything, but when was he around? When did he play basketball? Is he playing right now?
Oh, so he was from like 94 to 2007 is when he won all these championships, right? So, I mean, his career earnings are no chump change at all. I mean, it's like $53 million is what he made over the course of his career. However, go back to our LeBron James stat, right? That's like by the hour for LeBron practically. Should Robert Horry, who's a dude, get paid just as much as LeBron because he's won 7 championships? A la Sue Bird's won 4, so does she automatically get put into the conversation? There's other guys out there that are playing in the NBA that have had 10, 15, 20-year careers that they see the discrepancy in the pay that LeBron makes because of, 1, his talent, right? There's only one guy on the floor, that's LeBron James. 2, his marketability. And 3, his own initiatives to create his own marketability.
I was going to say that next, right? When you're throwing out those numbers, what does that include? Because LeBron has a lot of endorsements and he is very marketable and he does a lot. I don't know what this other person does to really debate that. But he's clearly not as marketable. What is their salary just taking out all the endorsements? Do you know how that compares?
So that wasn't in the, that obviously wasn't in the whatchamacallit, comparison, right?
Yeah. So see, I mean, that's my point. Like there's so many extraneous variables that go into this that do I think that men and women should be paid the same for the same amount? I understand the business model. And I understand that they have to bring money in. I understand the additional income that they get from their current job and of being an athlete and the endorsements and things like that tie into that income. So there's so many variables to go into play. But when it does come to just women in general in sports, I really truly believe that they need to be shown more. They need to be highlighted more and featured more media attention, and talk about them as often as they talk about the male sports.
I don't have ESPN. I'm limited there. So I'm limited there. When my company currently is doing a March Madness tournament bracket challenge, it's for the men's. we don't think about, like, because people just, I hate to say this, and I don't want this to sound sexist at all, but people just aren't interested at scale.
But why? I agree with you.
It has nothing to do with the quality of the product. I don't think you ever watch golf?
Oh, that's so boring. It's on the TV from time to time and throughout my life.
But and you always watch baseball?
I watch baseball, yeah. And
right, the highlights into a baseball game are really exciting. Right? They got the music playing.
Yeah, the highlights are.
They're showing the skinny. They're showing this rival. They'll do the flashes. This guy sliding in the second head first. All this. Then the game starts, and it's like the second inning in, let's say it, May 20th, and you're like this, unless you're there.
Yeah.
Golf.
Yeah, or I mean, there are things that can be exciting about a game, and there are things that it can make it really tiresome. In all the games,
golf, same deal, right? Golf,
right.
They have all this music coming in, and it's all this stuff, and you're like, wow, it's gonna be golf, and then it comes on, and it's like super quiet, and it's like the monotone like voice puts you to sleep, and so. Anything, yeah, like you can build up like marketing hype and put together a cool video, but once it gets going, it gets going. And I think that like Women's World Cup has like this huge mass appeal. They've done obviously much better and achieved much more on the field than the men.
Mm-hmm.
Girls play soccer in like significant droves in the United States, right? That whole first Mia Hamm, Women's World Cup team inspired just a million girls to go out and play soccer. But people don't go out and support those sports in spite of TV, radio, newspaper, social media, and all that stuff.
Says who?
Statistically, it shows it. I mean,
no. I mean, right now, this month, a bill was just introduced to Congress that was started by Alex Morgan with soccer, because when they won, they actually generated $20 million more than the male soccer team, and they were paid 4 times less.
Did you hear the article that I just referenced?
No.
It was breaking
down. That was a few years back.
It was breaking down the revenue from both the men's and women's World Cup. Now, that might be the individual soccer teams, but as a whole, the World Cup as a whole, there's a big difference between the two. Now, so that's this article says like it's the hard truth. Like there's a big.
It's not the hard truth. How old is that article?
2019.
So Alex, okay, 2019. I would love to see. I don't have the article or anything in front of me, but no, I'm serious, because with everything that with Alex Morgan and when they won, right? I mean, the numbers have shown this battle, and I really didn't follow it. I remember when it was happening, and I remember hearing about how they were paid less, they were treated differently, as far as like transportation, hotels, like all those little things we don't think about was completely different with the men and the women. Because of this conversation, I dug back into it, and I saw that, what they presented to the court initially and how they were making they generated $20 million more and got paid 4 times less. But I thought it was really crazy that when they went through the first time, the judge said no. They were able to appeal it, and now this month it's getting introduced to Congress, or it was introduced to Congress. I don't know when they're going to discuss it, but they're going to force the United States Soccer Federation to actually pay them. So again, I wouldn't have followed this. I wouldn't have looked into this if it wasn't for this conversation. But I was like shocked when I read that, because I had that same assumption. They just didn't generate enough money.
Here's the hard numbers in the WNBA, if these are right.
Oh, well, WNBA, I would agree. The attendance and probably
These are 2019 stats. 18,000 people on average attend NBA games. 6,700 attend WNBA games. NBA Finals, 15 million viewers versus 231,000 viewers for the WNBA. Those are
comparing apples and oranges. We're talking about,
but that plays into the factor of determining your market value.
I agree.
Is like, so you're only going to be able to grab what the market's able to give you now.
I agree. In that scenario, I absolutely agree. But they're not given the same attention. Maybe, they need to come up with a way to get more attention, but also the media needs to help and work with them as far as highlighting sports. That is completely different than what I was just talking about with the U.S. Soccer Federation.
Regardless of the media and the marketing hype machine, people aren't going to WNBA games in the same fervor as they are NBA games. And that has nothing to do with like the media covering them or not.
It probably does. I'm sure there's some impact in that. That's why they're starting. You've got people that are now starting their own media companies. Gosh, and I know I'm going to mess it up, but A-Rod started his own media company, and I'm blanking on the name, and there was somebody else.
Hart Productions, the Coaches Tribune, they're all media companies.
Right. But there are no women media companies, but now there are. Now there is one that I found out that Alex Morgan and I think Lily Kim.
It's the lady that left ESPN, and she was involved in a lot of just ugly stuff with ESPN. Janelle, oh gosh, what is her name? Look, I started a media company. There's nothing from anybody starting their own media company. Like an NBA team actually taps into probably the NBA front house of their organization for marketing purposes. That's on the organization. Mm-hmm. I don't put any of this on like, as a matter of fact, we're figuring out how to stream. We're figuring out how to stream all these regional and local sports online and way to monetize it. So I put that on those organizations, and I put that on the people that aren't going out to physically in person support those events. There's things
it's kind of
there's things that you and I both like that don't have any marketing hype behind it, and we kind of like that. I'd argue that.
Wait, say that one more time.
There's things that you and I probably both like that have no marketing hype, like a band.
Or
those lines, you're like, yeah, you're right. Like I know about it, nobody else knows about it, right? So I don't want to hear like we need this, we need the media, we need ESPN, we need this to validate it. No, like I don't think that we need that. But I think that statistically showing like WNBA doesn't get the same support maybe not get it from the media, and I get that, but they certainly don't get it from their fan base of going to actual games in person. So why is that?
I don't know.
Would you rather sit down and watch women's fast pitch softball or a men's Major League Baseball game?
Typically, I knew you were going to ask me that question, so. No, typically I prefer baseball over softball. I knew that was coming, but would I go watch a softball game? Yes, I would.
Didn't say would you.
I have watched softball games, and I've enjoyed it. But when it comes to professional, the ones that I'm going to are, I'm going to men, even college level. More likely, I'm going to a baseball game, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't. I think that's just the first thing I think about is the baseball or football.
I'm gonna share something with you.
Well, you are sharing that. Give me 1 second. I'm going to dip out for 1 second while you share and talk.
Oh, so you're not going to leave me all by myself to talk gender equality. So as Deanna steps away for just a second, this is what I found this. This is brutal. This is absolutely brutal. So the NCAA tournament, men's and women's, they've moved it to a bubble type of environment. The NCAA is $1 billion, well-organized machine, and they put together their workout facilities, and under much scrutiny. I don't know if you saw this, Deanna.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Picture on the right where there's weights and this big, huge room was what the NCAA put together for the men's basketball tournament that's being hosted in Indianapolis because of their playing kind of in a bubble situation. The picture on the left is what they did for the women's tournament. So that's the weight room for the women's, and on the right is the weight room for the men's.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's despicable. I think it's just absolutely horrible. And the reason is that, first of all, the NCAA is a $1 billion organization that's got so much money that they don't really know what to do with all the money that they got. So that's the first thing. I think that, look, unfortunately, when you go to Ohio State, Oregon, a big school, the facilities that they give to the football team are not the same facilities that even the rest of the athletes are getting, right? There's a big differentiation, and you're a revenue-driving sport, and that's what a lot of it comes down to. But the fact of the matter is that the NCAA is such a money-making organization that the message that it sends, that I personally think that the message that it sends, because they're at the head of it, but the message that they're rolling out to the rest of everybody else is that basically we're not going to treat people within our own organization the same, men and women. They're lesser, so why not give them less? Do they really work out during the tournament? All those sorts of things that I do think that is a bad message. Now, the question becomes this: because the leader does this second-class citizen type of ordeal, is the rest of it from the public perception then to say, well, if their own organization treats them as second-class citizens, then how important can the women's tournament be as well?
I hear you. I'm reading Ralph's. So he's putting NBA 7.4 billion, WNBA 60 million
annual revenue. By comparison, that's not even like it's not even a conversation.
Right. But why? And I agree. I mean, if one is generating different, but we go back to why. Why isn't it? Is it because?
And they're saying that teams lose and the league loses $10 million a year. So the NBA has to float the WNBA.
Right. So, but how do we change that? That's my point. Like, I agree there's no viewership, right? There's minimal viewership in this scenario. Not in all sports, in this particular scenario. In most women's sports, this is what it looks like. But it's also, you're not, when did it start? Like, and that's where I'm curious, and I don't have the answer to that. But we know the men's gets more media attention. I know you say media doesn't matter, but media definitely matters. If media didn't matter, every time we turn on the TV right now, we are all getting fed the same thing over and over and over. We don't need to go into what that is, right? But the more you hear something, right, the more you're aware of it, the more interest it is. So is it that, we just don't hear about these women's sports as often? We don't hear about the players. We're not learning about them. Is that why the viewership is down? Or is the viewership down because they don't care? And I don't know, but I definitely think when 4% of the media attention of all sports, 4% is allocated towards women's sports, maybe it starts there. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? Is it because of that, because there's no viewership, or is it or is there no viewership because it's 4%?
Or is the product just like the marketability and like the curb appeal and like is the product right?
Ah,
Betting. I don't know if DraftKings you can go place a bet on the WNBA. I'm sure that like Vegas is going to take your money, like regardless.
yes, they will.
So it's not like I feel like that's on the board, but obviously, the NFL's huge appeal now as they try to minimize the violence in the sport is the opportunity to bet on a weekly basis, the fantasy football, all the fantasy sport that goes around goes around it. So if you can't bet on the WNBA, that probably could make it more of an appeal to at least to an audience.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And Ralph or Dennis, do you know why you can't bet? And I'm going to share this link because Ralph, if you know, how do we? Let's see. And I don't know if.
Well,
if you want to join in, Ralph, and you happen to know, hop in there. Oh, I think it went to the YouTube one. Oh, there we go. But why can't you bet on the WNBA?
All right. So, I think that at times, we want to make it a male-female thing. But when we really drill down into it, there's only one, like, we want to make it a male-female thing, right? And that's what we're doing. He said, she said. But at the end of the day, like when you look at it kind of across the board, like, how do you justify a lesser player in the NBA to make more money just because the NBA stats as a totality are higher? And they can't be. Like you can't be the highest paid person in the company if you're not the top producer.
I agree with that.
So then why do we have to make this a male-female conversation?
Because it still is. In the NBA and WNBA, again, what comes first? You can say it's not male-female, right? And we can say the business model, and again, I feel like I keep repeating myself. Absolutely. Does the NBA generate more revenue? Yes. Undoubtedly, absolutely, yes. I mean, we know the players. We recognize. Well, most people know the players. I may not, but most people know who they are, right? Again, but where does that begin? Is it because we are not talking about them? We're not featuring them as often, and media is absolutely important.
I can name 3 Major League Baseball players. 4.
Do you go to games?
No, unless we get free tickets.
Okay. Do you go to any?
I've got an army of kids.
So I know you do. I know you do.
In the last Pirates game that we went to the concession stand, bought 4 waters and 3 popcorns, and it was like $60.
Took a second mortgage out on your house.
Like, I got popcorn and water. Mookie Betts, Madison Bumgarner, Mike Trout is Michael's favorite ball player, and Mateo's, and Aaron Judge.
But okay, wait. Ralph is saying top betting sites.
Those 4 guys combined, I know, make more money than the GDP of most small third world countries. Like each one of those guys is $100 million contract. There's $500 million in contracts of the 4 guys I just named. But I have no idea anybody beyond that in Major League Baseball. And we're like knee deep in baseball.
So why do you think that is then?
Has nothing to do with like the marketability or the media coverage. I know that they give baseball coverage, 162 times 28 teams is a lot of media coverage. Talking about it all the time.
Yeah.
So like I don't think I don't know, like I think that the economics of things might kind of turn around now that like nobody's been in a stadium, and these TV contracts, are they that amazing that in the advertising that they've been able to make so much money for these owners that they were able to sustain, not selling out a game, 40,000 people, 82 games a year at a certain point, at an average cost of a ticket of $50 a ticket. Is something, something's got to give eventually there. And maybe you're just looking at some sports that are still in their infancy, right? Baseball's been around for like 100 years. So it's a mature business model. The NFL's been around for 50 years. It's a mature business model. The WNBA has been around for about 20 years. So maybe when you're looking at, as far as business models go and trying to close the equity pay, maybe the fact of the matter is that maybe we're not giving it just due to the men's sport that's had a business model that's been around a lot longer.
Possibly, but I don't know. I really think there's more to it. I really think that,
like, we're purposely holding women back in the gender.
No, I don't think it's like where it's like thought out purposely we're holding women back, right? But for whatever reason, it's not getting highlighted as much. And I think it should. But, I'm thinking last month I shared something on my Facebook page. And I like the I don't know, something popped up and gave me an alert. So it could have been like National Baseball Hall of Fame or something like that. Or maybe I followed them, and so they went live and they did an interview. But they were interviewing a woman who played on the baseball team, like, where a League of Their Own was kind of created. Sure. Okay, so they were interviewing her, one of the original players, and she was talking about what it was like to play at that time. She was talking about like what it was like to have these actresses come on, and they were picking who it was. And I shared it because I thought it was like the absolute coolest conversation with this woman, and nobody liked it. I'm like, this was so cool and so interesting to me. No, I mean, first off, just what was happening at that time. She's a woman athlete, and she deserves that attention, right? But it just, to me, it's really interesting why women athletes are not getting the same media attention that men are getting. I understand why they're not getting paid as much because of revenue, but why are they not getting attention? Why are we not highlighting some of these amazing women athletes and talking about them and sharing that?
You have to admit something. When you watch the men's game and you watch the women's game, aesthetically it looks different. And I'm not talking about men and women. I'm talking about the aesthetics of the game. Like, it's a different game. Like, it's not the same game. It's just bottom line. It's like, so, I mean, if you, and I can appreciate, I mean, and look, we're talking a lot of basketball right now, and it is March Madness, and
it is. So, and I don't know basketball really well, but
I am a huge hoops junkie. Like, I played college basketball. Like, I love basketball. My sister asked me if I wanted to go watch a state championship game Thursday in Hershey, PA, because their high school team is playing. It's the women's. I was like, and the other team has a girl that's probably going to play in the WNBA. I was like, I don't care if it, like, even if it was the boys' game and LeBron was coming back to high school, I'm not going to drive to Hershey, PA to go watch a basketball game on a Thursday. So, like, that, me not going has nothing to do with it being a girls' team or a guys' team. I just know that when I watch a sport, it's not to say that women aren't doing amazing things, because they are. I see them. I see good basketball. I see great basketball. I see great soccer. I see like competition. I see all the same things, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like something's like a little bit off. Like it's a little slower. Maybe it's not quite as fast. Like they don't kind of jump as high, right? Like Okay. It's like when Petey was playing like 18U baseball. I get the two confused all the time.
And Alex was traveling back before travel was so diluted.
I have a 12U travel kid and a 10U travel kid. And I'm just like, something's, I'm lagging. Am I lagging? Okay. I got a 12U travel kid and a 10U travel kid. And when I'm back down to 10U, I'm like, I can't believe I'm here again in 10U, right?
I remember that feeling.
My first go around to 10U was like, wow, these kids are amazing. Now that I've got a 12U, I'm back in 10U. I'm like, by the time Leo gets there, I'm gonna be like, oh, this is right. I'm gonna have and that's what it's kind of like just this little difference between the two. So that justifies me, but there's still a whole host of girls that are playing athletics, and I can't blame the fact that only 4% of media coverage, Ralph, comes down to media covering sports. I can't put it on that. I cannot put it on.
I do, and I think that's a piece of it. I'm not saying 100% that that's it, but I think that's a really big piece of it. They're not getting the attention, and so maybe women are a little bit different. First off, I do enjoy watching sports. I may not always, know every player, or I don't watch basketball that much, unless I am with a group of friends who are watching basketball, and then I pay more attention. But I don't know the sport, right? But I know that if I hear a story about a player or a team, right, now when I watch it, I understand a little bit more. So I understand what that player is going through. I understand like they just did something, right? And that's why we tell stories. We tell stories in social media, right? Because we want to bring that connection together. We want, if somebody hears our story, they connect to us, we sell more product. We hear these stories of these athletes. We hear the stories of the teams. And then we connect to them and we want to hear more about them. We want to watch them more. We want to learn more about them. We want to support them, or maybe we don't want to support them, right? I know the other night we were watching, Jason loves watching UFC. So in the beginning, they kept showing this one guy, and I don't know who they all are, but they kept showing this guy. He was so cocky and so arrogant. I go, is he like fighting tonight? Jason's like, yeah. I go, I hope he loses. Like, I just wanted him to lose because he was so unbelievably cocky in this whole interview. And I didn't watch the end. I went to bed. He stayed up and watched it. But then the next morning, he's like, your guy lost. He's like, I was like so excited, right? So my point is media attention. They're sharing more about the individual players. They're sharing more about the teams. Like, I started watching Green Bay Packers more when I watched a documentary on how the town owns the football team. I thought that was super cool the way they did that. So when I watched it from a different perspective. And I believe that because women don't get that type of media coverage, then there is a disconnect. It's just a bunch of players playing a game. You don't really connect with them anyway, like we do when we're watching LeBron.
Interestingly enough, I don't know if this, how accurate these numbers are, but from what the web tells me is that Ronda Rousey's made around, net worth is around $13 million. Chuck Liddell, the Iceman, roughly $14 million. Okay. Ronda Rousey went out and she took it. She went and got it. She went and got it.
Yeah, I know her name. I don't know his name. I hear a different name though often, and I don't know who it is. But
I mean, he's like the guy. Like, he's one of the guys from like the early days, right?
Okay, so they're pretty close, but and they're mixing men and women all the same time during that. So they're getting very similar media coverage.
So that's what you attribute. Ronda Rousey's making more money because she's been on a pay-per-view card with men. So if we had WNBA games, like the JV games at high school basketball, instead of playing the JV boys basketball game before the boys basketball game, we play the girls game and then we play the boys game. Or we play the boys game and then we play the girls game.
Maybe. I mean, UFC just kind of backed up what I'm saying without me even knowing that.
Yeah, I don't buy
They're all playing during the same time. They're getting very similar coverage and they're making very similar amounts of money. He's still making more. So does that mean that he's actually bringing in more? Or I mean,
we're not going to squabble over $1 million when you've made 13.
No, why would we? It's only $1 million. Mr. Moneybags.
I mean, that's just like, I mean, he is a little older, so she's got a little bit more runway. I don't know. Like,
but that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I
don't see.
I think that's proof.
I don't know that I can. Collective bargaining, like, do the men have collective bargaining? Is their unions done a better job of securing their, like, what if the women all just said, like, hey, we're not going to play until we get paid more?
Didn't they do that? And what was that soccer where they did that? They did it in one sport, I think, not long ago, right? Or they threatened it. Was it soccer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
do they get paid less because they're women, or do they get paid less based upon the economics of it all? I think that's what we're really trying to distill down to, because you could very just.
Okay, so why is the economics less though? Is the economics less because they have equal media attention or lesser media attention? UFC, you just shared an article that like nails it. So
yeah, but I think
they definitely are paid.
The thing that you have to understand, like, we all have to come to grips with too, is like the media is obviously about generating revenue. And if you've got a marketable product and they feel like they can maximize their earning potential off of it, then they're going to put it in a situation to where it's going to maximize their money-making opportunities. So once again, you're going back to the product and basically saying, well, if it was an equal share, then they had more media coverage, they'd make more money. But the media obviously hasn't seen the marketability and the economics work out for them either. And I come back down to, is it the individuals they can't market? Is it the product? Is it the teams? Like, is it sport? Because the media if the media could package it up tomorrow and make $1 billion off the WNBA, they'd do it.
Right. And they're not. It's a process, right? And the media, and I apologize to all my media friends, right? Take the lowest hanging fruit more times than not. They're not unbiased anymore. They are they're picking the easy stuff that
sells.
Even when it's not, even when they shouldn't be. I'm trying to find the right words because I'm like stepping lightly here.
If you step back into it, right? So Major League viewership has been on a steady decline in this country for over 20 years. And you can name 4 of the top Major League Baseball players. I can, right? And it's been on a steady decline. And they can't seem to figure out how to fix that.
Who can't? The media?
The media. The networks. They want to shorten the game. They want to do things to the game that change the game because they want to make it more right? Yeah. They want more people to watch. The problem with baseball is that your biggest spectacle, which is your World Series, starts at 9 o'clock at night, and you've lost 2 generations over 20. You've lost 20 years. My son gets on the couch to go watch Mookie Betts run the bases, and by the 3rd inning, he's passed out on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, like, I think that the media is in the business of not delivering you news. They're in the business of selling advertising, and that's based upon viewership. And they're selling you something that they know that builds viewership, and they paint that picture now. And if they can because they can make money off it. I feel like if they can make money off the women's game, I mean, if they painted you all the stuff that they've painted you over the past year, they can certainly go out and paint you the picture that the women's game is better than the men's game to build marketability.
They can.
But they're for some reason or other, they don't think that they can, or else they would have.
Well, they are also big companies that are also backed by money and told what to do. So, you know,
So now do we have a worldwide conspiracy to hold women back?
no. I mean, there absolutely is a gender gap when it comes to pay. And I'm not saying it's this thought out conspiracy, but I don't like conspiracies. But there is something that needs to change. And I do think, I mean, there are a lot, and I'm going to say it again, there's a lot of amazing women athletes. And I think that they should be talked about more in the media. And they're not. For whatever reason, I don't know.
Wait, Deanna,
what?
At the end of the day, I'm really amazing at what I do. And the media should cover me more.
I'm talking no.
And they don't. So you know what? I don't rely upon that to tell my story, which is why you and I are doing a Facebook Live right now.
Right. But even though you don't have to rely on that, and they all have different ways to tell their story, the media, when you're talking on that realm of athletics, the media does have a big impact of who they're highlighting and what they're featuring. And again, UFC, the men and the women, top man and top woman, right, make very similar amounts of money. And they feature both of those athletes.
Well, I think I pulled Ronda Rousey, the most popular fighter of all time.
Well, one of the top ones. I'm not saying of all times. Who said the best fighter? I wouldn't make that statement. I don't know that well enough. I'm just saying that they're getting equal amount of media attention and their names are known. I think I may have seen her fight 1 or 2 times, but I don't know her.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen a Ronda.
I know the name.
Right. I mean, obviously.
I know the name, and why? Because the media made that name.
Ronda
they
Rousey.
Shared it. She made the name. You're right. She did the work. She did the work. She made the name, but the media also gave her that attention as well.
I don't know. I don't buy that.
I don't know. I do. I mean, unfortunately there is a difference. I would love to see it change. I don't know if I don't think I will ever see that change in my lifetime, at least with some of the athletics. I think, I mean, tennis, you do see more, but that's typically a women's sport.
You're also talking too, like when you get into the nuts of that, like, I mean, imagine Venus and Serena have made just boatloads of money. And not only that, probably a lot of that's been off of an endorsement type of situation as well. The thing you kind of wonder is, if they were men, would it be times 10 or 20?
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's inherently wrong what the NCAA did to treat women athletes as a secondhand citizen in that situation. I find the economics to be a big driver behind the bulk of this discussion, regardless if you're a male or female, or if you're a revenue driving. It's just the way that it is. Like, if you're a revenue driving sport in a college, you're getting all the preferential treatment, and it doesn't feel right, but that's just the way that it goes.
Even the scholarships that are available for athletes, high school athletes or college athletes, those scholarships are not divided equally, because football gets the majority of them. Even you can't say men and women. Women do get, the girls do get less scholarships, but football overall takes the majority of the scholarships, because that's what people go to see.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And we ended up with, I mean, even at a smaller college, like, they were splitting scholarships, and it wasn't always based upon your athletic ability or your. Right. It wasn't based upon my worth to the college to a certain extent. It was based upon, they wanted to float me. They wanted to float me money, but they also were based upon, like, my financial need as well. So if they could get away with getting me more grant money and offsetting it with scholarship money and saving that for somebody else, even though I was a better athlete or more valuable to the basketball team, that's how the economics would play out. It had everything to do with that. It had nothing to do with, well, we got to give him a full ride because he's our best player. It did look and say, well, here's how this money is going to shake out for this person.
Yeah. They look at a lot of different variables when they're bringing them on.
Yep.
Hopefully things will change.
Now I guess to kind of boil this down, and I don't know if we get into the future episode, but how do you think that this impacts then the private sector, the world that we're not talking about obviously civilians at this point. We're talking about we're talking about professional athletes. Do you think that this has trickled over into our private sector to where, obviously it's proven that women have made less than men, but
yeah, it absolutely has. Women definitely make less than men.
Is it because of like what the national perception is? So like if it's okay for an NBA player to make more, then why wouldn't it make sense for me as a sales rep to make more?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know why. I don't know when a man gets promoted to a high level, he's earned it. When a woman has, she slept her way to the top, right? I mean, these are things we hear all the time. I mean, but those are things that are said a lot, right? And there is a difference in perception, and there is a difference in the way men and women are treated. I believe, I don't know what the facts are, but I believe that it's decreasing, but at a very, very slow rate. There's still not an even playing field, but I don't know why.
But you have your own business.
Yes.
Can't you set the rate?
Oh, I do. And I mean, in my case, I definitely do. And I can set the rate. But I will say in the beginning, and I'm kind of talking just like Youngstown market right now, because that's the easiest way for me to compare it. Because as I was starting my business and as I was like early in those stages, right, I lacked that confidence as well. And I know that men typically, more times than not, men potential clients treated me differently than women potential clients. Now, we can go round and round and say, well, I lack the confidence, so maybe I acted a little bit differently, or maybe, that came out, whatever. I don't really know, being totally transparent. I'm not sure, but I was definitely treated differently in the beginning. I had to reach a point of confidence where I knew what I was worth. I knew what my talent was, and I kind of held my ground, and then it was different. So I do get to set my rate.
Do you think that in that lens, and maybe you've done this, I don't know, do you think that some women feel the need to overcompensate their kind of, is the right word, aggression or assertiveness because of the female complex?
What is the female complex? Let's start there.
Well, it's like the little person's complex. Like I have to.
Is that what that is?
I have to
I think you're the first person.
I have to overcompensate for my diminutive stature.
Well, I don't know if that's the case. I think in the beginning, I felt I had to prove myself more when I had to prove myself more to men. What'd she say?
You can do the show all you want.
Laura, come on. I would love to hear her view. Joanna.
We're doing the show next because I'm going to give you the truth.
It'll be she said. And then that's how it usually goes. Like, I say nothing, and then she says everything, and then Dan's like, yeah, you go. Here's where I'm at with this. I've been in situations before where, and you understand this. For those of you who do not understand, this is the businesses that I have, the businesses that that I run, and the events that I run. I'd say 70%, if not more, are all female major contributors, work in the business, right? And it's not by design. It's just the way that it works. But I've also been in situations where I've been employed where I've had female bosses that I felt like were overcompensating because they were female.
So when you say overcompensating, do you mean being firm? Do you mean
like overly
firm?
Like over the top because they're trying to get beyond that I'm a female.
Well, I don't think they're trying to get over.
There's not even a guy. There's not even a man, right, that would do this. And now you just can't be normal at a level. It felt like there was an insecurity that was being covered up with this overcompensation for the authoritative figure. And I'd be like, this is difficult to deal with.
So I don't think I've ever had someone like that. Most of my bosses who were women and men, I honestly think I had some really great bosses. So I really didn't see that. What I can speculate, as being a woman, is that sometimes you get to this point because of the way that you're looked at, that you have to step up a little bit more. I know when I was in management, right? So I'm thinking back to that. You do, because
I shouldn't be the person that has to take the brunt of that storm, though. But
it starts from the top and it trickles down, right? So, and I don't know. Like I said, I've always had men and women managers that I really like. So I can't.
I always find it to be incredibly annoying that I don't know, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, I've dealt with a lot of different men, past clients, and even being in the industry. And I don't know if I can really say it, but it's like, who's bigger, right? Like, they just kind of why is this why is this like this? Like, what are you trying to prove? You just can't have a conversation with somebody in the industry. It has to be like, they have to one up you. They've got to be better than you. They've got to be whatever. And I don't really get that.
So that's also, I mean, obviously that's I try to be very conscious of that. And I get that right now with a lot of baseball things and teams that were, well, let me just say this. I get it. I also get the other side of it. It's very difficult and always a challenge to deal with ego, and ego, no matter if it's male or female.
Yeah.
Because it's I'm here to get a job done. And so ego comes in a lot of different forms. That's very destructive to business, in things in general, whether you got to be right, whether you got to one up, whether your lack of confidence is a position of one of that you've got to continually, well, I did this and I did it twice. And,
well, you've heard my presentation when I speak about, men and women and how we're wired differently. And there is proof that men typically have a more confident, opinion of themselves. And there's been study after study done, right? So if you ask a man that, you put a job posting up on the wall and you ask a man, or ask a woman, are you going to apply for that posting? She'll look at it. And if all those qualifications don't really hit her, she's like, I don't really know. I don't really have all the qualifications there. If you ask a man, he'll look at him, have half of them. And he's like, yeah, that job's mine. I own it. I'm going to, I'm going for it. And it's been shown. So maybe that's where it stems. We are wired differently. And, and that's okay. It just, we have to learn how to communicate with each other, and kind of getting off topic a little bit, but change just has to be made somehow. We have to keep reducing this gender gap and not pay.
Well, I do agree with that. I mean, I do agree that things like the NCAA and the equality of what you do with a weight room speaks volumes of how you're kind of leveling the playing field for both. I don't think that we'll come to a common agreement that more media coverage increases the viewership, which leads to an increase in pay. And the reason is that I think economic factors also, you can only get what the market could yield.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of leave off at. But I do think that from a perspective of respect, you obviously there's a lot to respect there. So anyway, all right. So what do we got next week? We don't know.
We never know. We never know. We just show up and talk. And appreciate people like Ralph that show up and talk with us.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, well, anyway, I'm not even going to get into what I think about Facebook and their lies.
It's been a tough algorithm lately, hasn't it? With all their changes. Did you get the new business page?
I didn't switch over. No, wait.
No.
I think I did.
Just recently. Like, this is like just within the last week or so. This isn't the one that came out like 6 months ago. This is like a new one.
I don't have it, and I've been reluctant to switch my likes over to followers.
Yeah.
So I've been reluctant to do that. The thing that I've actually been struggling a little bit with is the Facebook pixel and then the verification of the amount of events that you can have on a pixel now because of the changes coming with the iOS 14 operating platform.
Yeah.
But the way that I interpret it, though, is that as of right now, I'm fine. My pixel's fine. But then there are certain events that may not get captured if I can't add them. So that's been a little bit of a little bit of an issue.
No, I hear you. I know I've been battling the same thing. You can definitely tell there's a lot of changes going on, even though they've told us what they are. I mean, the algorithm is definitely slowed up a lot and blocked a lot of content again with these changes. And I see glitches and I hear about glitches. I haven't really experienced as many as others have, but yeah, and then just
I think that the answer is really around very communal groups. And I'm not talking like big groups, like national groups. I'm talking like, what's the town you're living in now?
What's what?
What's the town you're living in now?
DeLand.
It's like taking whether you like pizza or it's purses or whether it's swimming, and it's not making a swimming group. It's like making a swimming group DeLand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's very specific to subject and community and focusing on that group model versus anything else. And then still finding the opportunity with, $100 goes a long way on Facebook.
Yeah. It does. It does. And it's funny because my feelings of Facebook and wanting to jump ship. But the other day I was showing somebody Google Analytics, and just this is what it is. This is what you can find out. And I was using my own and was shocked to see most people come to my website through Facebook. I mean, of the social ones, most of them actually look for it, which is a good thing. But when you're looking at social referrals, most were Facebook more than Instagram, which kind of surprised me.
Why would you think Instagram would be?
Because I've been a lot more active on Instagram lately. And it's improved. My following has grown. My engagement has grown. I'm having more fun over there. So the social referrals have increased with Instagram. People are going over there, but Facebook was actually the #1 social platform to drive traffic to my site.
It doesn't surprise me though, because we're just not conditioned with whatchamacallit.
With Instagram.
Yeah, it's not
when we're looking up a company or looking up a business. You're right.
It's not a click platform. It's a click my bio platform. And like, I think that everybody just kind of wants to stay where they're at with it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at something right now. So, what's interesting is that the decline of acquisition from Facebook since we started back in 2016 to now, it's significant. Like that to me is probably the bigger. I mean, we went from, I don't know. I mean, when we started out, like, wow, this is easy. Now it's like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
the past year's not really the best example of that either. But our social media traffic has leveled. Actually, no, 868% of the social traffic to our website was Facebook in 2020 versus 28% from LinkedIn's the next biggest, and the rest of them I just might as well all abandon.
Yeah.
I don't even know why we would try to continue to have some of that strategy going on. Now, if I went back, that's 800 visits. If I go back to 16, and we really went all in around April to, let's say, 2019. We'll go 2018. And those channels look like Facebook, 10,000 visits from April of 2016 to 2018, 1,600 on Twitter, 856 on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn actually over the past year has generated so Facebook continues to be like the dominant factor in our lives.
Yeah. It is. It is. Oh, well. I got to get out of here.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm out. I'll see you all. Have a good week.
Bye.